name is Daniel Benavides. I'm a hospitality attorney. I work with many hotels and restaurants in the area on day-to-day matters. I believe I see some people in the webinar that I know. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm very happy to have with me today Javi Lopez and Ben Woodland from my former law firm of Kozak Tropin. Their firm, and I used to work there, is one of the respected law firms in and they also have been filed actual lawsuit in the country related to COVID-19 insurance coverage, and that case filed on behalf of a Miami restaurant group. And Ben had prepared a short PowerPoint presentation to walk you through business insurance generally and why a virus exclusion, unlike what you've been told, does not necessarily mean that you are not covered for your business losses. Javi and Ben have also agreed to review your policies free and your claims. We will go steps to do that at the end of this presentation. Javi and Ben, take it away. Manage the power.
Thanks, Danny. And thank you all for joining with us. We will have as much time as we need to for questions at the end. So for the time being, I'm just going to sort of dive right into the content and go from there. The most important thing you need to know before we get into the content of this presentation is that nobody knows what's actually going to happen here. And anybody that tells you they know what's going to happen here is lying to you. There are guesses, there are hopes, there's best bets, but this is a totally new thing for everybody. And because of that, nobody can predict how it's ultimately going to end up. All that we suggest and all that we're trying to do for our clients is put them in the best position as possible for whatever might happen. So we're trying to cover as many bases as we can to ensure, as best we can, that our clients come out of this as close to whole as possible. So background on coronavirus, I'm sure you all know this. Began in China. It's a disaster. It's a disaster of international proportions. It's a failure of multiple governments, multiple health organizations, from the international organizations all the way down to local municipalities have failed. Some have done better than others, but really nobody has been perfect here. And that's not just a local thing, that's a national and an international thing. And additionally, go back real quick, Danny. Additionally, an important point here is that the disaster itself is not solely the disease. The disaster, as all of you on this call know, is in large part, caused by the government, various government entities, ultimately requiring that everybody shuts down. There's the emergency declarations, national, state, local stay-at-home orders, and many local orders have specifically stated that COVID-19 has caused and causes property damage. The Broward County Ordinance, the Key West Ordinance, for example, locally have said that. City of Miami, County of Miami have not included that language. We're working, hopefully we can get that in future orders. Obviously, that's something that you as business owners could ask for and petition. And if you have questions about how to do that, we'll talk about that later. But the goal is, and we'll see why later on, to focus this entire perspective, this entire approach on the fact that the disaster for you business owners is that the government shut you down, not the virus. Next slide. Taking a step back from this particular disaster, it's important to remember that, and you guys know this better than any because you've been through these with hurricanes, disasters are different for insurance companies. It's not business as usual. When you have a problem, it's an individual problem, and you go to your insurance company, maybe they fight with you about it, maybe they delay, but ultimately you normally get some sort of resolution. But here, the insurance companies view this as an existential threat to their industry. And that means that you as business owners, as insureds, cannot sort of just hope that it's going to work out for the best at the end. You have to go on the offensive. You have to attack. Now, look, there's no way to know how this is going to end up. I told you that before. I'll probably say that another 10 times during this presentation. But you have to, and we believe that lawsuits may ultimately be the only way to do this, but you have to push, because if you don't push, the insurance company sure as heck isn't going to pay out just out of the goodness of their hearts. Next slide. So you guys know that you have some insurance policies. You all have insurance policies. I'm betting that many of them have virus exclusions in them. You've probably read your policies a dozen times, and some of them have virus exclusions. Some of them probably don't. The important thing to remember is that all policies are different. The language is often similar, but the policies themselves are different. Some have this exclusion, some have this endorsement, and those are particular insurance words that we'll talk about later on. You probably already know the answers to and what the definitions are to those. But the bottom line is, until you have a lawyer do a deep dive analysis of a policy, just because there's a virus exclusion, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't recover here. One of the theories that we've been talking about, and I think you probably saw this on the earlier slide, this disaster was not caused by the virus. This disaster, the economic disaster for you guys, was caused by the shutdown of your businesses, government stay-at-home orders, and the national emergency disaster declaration. So it's a different cause of the problem. Now, is that necessarily going to mean that you're getting full coverage? I don't know the answer to that question. Nobody does. But the point here is that you need to look at your policy, and you need to have a lawyer review your policy. And you have business insurance protection. Maybe that means you get coverage. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe one of the exclusions does shut you out. But it's not just business insurance. You might have extra expense coverage. That means you have coverage for additional costs to keep your business open when there's a serious problem like there is now. And you just have to look at your full policy. And it might not be your general commercial policy. They might have an endorsement or a rider or a separate policy that covers it. So you've got to look at the entirety of your insurance package and portfolio. Next slide.
If I could add to that, my name is Javier Lopez. I'm partners with Ben, managing partner of Kozak Tropin. I think that what Ben talked about in terms of the language in these shutdown orders being important, and us working with local government to get that magic language in there. There is different clauses in your policies. For example, government authority. That is something that we see in a lot of policies. What is that? The issue, the legal strategy, the main legal strategy that you're seeing evolve is that COVID is different than, let's say, H1B1, Ebola, those types of outbreaks. Why? The big wrinkle is that it can be suppressed by social distancing and by isolation. So because of that wrinkle, then you're seeing the state and the local governments issue these stay-at-home orders, the forced closures of non-essential businesses. So that is why this is different than those other outbreaks, and why it gives you as the insureds different types of ammunition rather than the traditional business interruption causes, which are physical damage such as hurricane, tornado, earthquake. So there, just because it has a virus exclusion, there's a lot of other types of language that you have in there. And you're also seeing, I think right now there's 8 states in the country that have already proposed litigation to retroactively cover COVID under BI. Florida is not one of them. But you're also seeing that discussion on the federal level as well. I think at some point the government, whether it's the state or the federal governments, are going to get involved somehow, because, like Ben said, these insurance companies, it is a threat to their business, because it is every industry attacked at the same time across the board, and they're obviously they're going to see a tsunami of these claims.
So before we dive too deep into individual policies, these are some general terms that you may have seen or you may have heard discussed. I'm not going to read these slides, but what Javi just said is very important. This is an issue that is affecting almost every brick and mortar business that you can imagine. Hotels, restaurants, bookstores, any brick and mortar retailer, doctor's office, dentists, non-elective medical personnel procedures are banned by state order right now. So if you can imagine a business that does commerce with people that come in the door, they're suffering, as you all know. And most of those businesses have some kind of coverage. If you added up all of the policies and all of the coverage that all of these different businesses had, the insurance company clearly would, the insurance industry as a whole is really facing an existential threat. If they pay out on all these policies, they're going to go under. So they are in the business now of deny, delay, drag everything out in the hope that there's a legislative solution. But we don't know what's going to happen. So all we can do is give our best guess. So you see these terms, I'm not going to read them to you. You can read them for yourselves. These terms, I want to go back real quick to just one of these terms, mitigate. This is an important term for you guys to know. Insureds generally have a duty to mitigate damages after a loss. It's well recognized, right? A good example of this in the hurricane context is a homeowner has a duty to throw up one of those big blue tarps over the top of their house if their roof blows up. Now, is that actually going to stop the damage to the home? No, it's not. But it is a step, an affirmative step the homeowner has taken to prevent and protect their property from additional damage. I don't know what that looks like in the context of a hotel on South Beach that is no longer allowed to take clientele. I don't know what mitigation looks like in that context. But this is something that you need to think about, because I guarantee you that if there is some sort of solution here, if there is litigation, the insurance companies are going to say when it gets to the calculation of damages, well, yeah, maybe you have a $5 million policy and maybe you have $7 million in provable damages, but you took no mitigation steps while you were getting that, while you were making those damage calculations. So really, your damages are actually $2 million. So this is something you guys all need to be aware of and need to be thinking about. This is something that talking to someone like Danny, a hospitality attorney, would be very, very useful, because he probably can guide you in some approach. Danny, I don't know, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I mean, what the hotels have been doing, of course, is applying for the PPP loans, all the various grants that the government putting out. So, and I think, and I don't know that there's anybody that has not applied, but of course, if you have not applied, you should apply. Chances are you'll be, you won't get it. Most people haven't received their loans yet, but at a minimum, you should apply. That's the thing. If you have hotels that are not in the city of Miami Beach, so the city of Miami Beach has banned all hotels, even essential guests. But if you have a hotel in the city of Miami, essential guests, I don't believe are banned yet. So goes and collect whatever. And I can't think of much else. If you have an F&B operation, maybe try to do takeout and delivery if it makes financial sense. So the thing you could cut employees, lay off furloughs to the extent you haven't done that already. So those are the types of things you can do to mitigate the damages. But I believe that every hotel's done that or doing that. If you haven't, let me know. I'm happy to walk anybody on this call through that.
Great. Next slide. Okay, this is important stuff here, and it's important, and frankly, there's no reason that any of you would know about it. This is lawyer talk. This is why people hire people like Javi, Danny, and me. Insurance contracts across America, and in Florida more specifically, the courts have said that they should be read in favor of the insured. The policy should be interpreted by the court as finding coverage when you can. That means that if language is ambiguous, right? If policies could find coverage or maybe not, you read that in favor of coverage. So that's very important. And a lot of insurance litigation comes down to, well, in this clause, you said that you cover microorganisms. Well, is this a microorganism or is this a virus? Well, in this clause, you talked about pollution. Is this pollution or is this a microorganism, right? So it's all about cutting it fine along the definition of different words in the policy. And that's why the individual language in the policies is so important.
One thing to add to that, we're trial lawyers. So if we get past, and I'm not sure how many of you have been through the litigation process, but one of the things that's going to be helpful in these types of cases is that everybody's feeling it right now, including the judges, right? So if based on the fact that contracts should be construed in favor of coverage, that judges are human beings and they're going through this, I think that if there is, and I've spoken, I have a lot of friends that are on the bench. If something is not absolutely clear, black and white, and many times it's not, and that's sometimes what we do. We say, look, it's not black and white, and get past, motion to dismiss, motion for summary judgment. They would be the insurance companies would probably be very hesitant, very scared to take something like this to trial, because the jurors are also living through this, and there's not a particularly good taste in people's mouth generally about insurance companies, especially in light of a fact pattern like this, where you've got an insured that's been paying premiums in your businesses for years and years and years, and when you need the help, there's sorry, it's denied based on this, this bacteria, it's a virus, not a bacteria or a pathogen, some technicality trying to get out of the coverage. So I think there's definitely something to be said about when you do hire lawyers, take a look at their whether what I'll call our settlement lawyers as opposed to trial lawyers. I think when you hire a firm that has a reputation of being trial lawyers and getting these types, these large cases and results, it adds, the price of poker goes up when you have that ability to have that discussion with the other side at the negotiation table. Go ahead, B.
All right, thanks, Evan. There was just to piggyback on that, I don't know if anybody saw, there was an op-ed in USA Today by Thomas Keller, I believe yesterday or maybe today, where he talks about how he and a bunch of other restaurateurs have been paying policy premiums for decades because they want to protect their business and they want to protect their employees. You guys have been doing the same thing. If you added up the amount of money that you spent on your policies since the last time you had a substantial injury, it's probably more than the amount of coverage that you are going to be applying for. That's how insurance companies make money. That's how they're profitable. So what you've got here is a situation where you have been funding them for decades. You and everybody else has been funding them for decades. You have a problem now, a problem not of your making or really anybody's making. And they are supposed to be there to catch you when you fall. They are the safety net. What they're doing now is they've taken their own safety net and they've opened the holes in it and said, oh yeah, this is one of the holes and you fell right through and you have no coverage. If that doesn't make you angry, you probably don't have a heartbeat. It makes me angry and I'm not a business owner. So that's all I'll say about that. Okay. this is how we look at these things. This is a lot of lawyer language, and I'm not going to get into it here, but this is how we approach a policy. And every lawyer probably is going to do the exact same thing. You have to start with the policy itself. You have to start with the language in the policy. These are long documents, right? These are 100-page, 150-page, 200-page documents. They have all risk or stated peril. They have business interruption insurance or they don't. They have extra expense coverage or they don't. They talk about how they define property damage. They talk about what is covered. They have ingress-egress coverage. That's a really big one for hotels. That's a really, really big one, ingress-egress coverage. That may be, frankly, your best bet for getting money here. I don't know. Again, it depends on the particular language in your policy. Many policies have reimbursements for having to file a claim. You have to hire a lawyer, an accountant to file a claim. Well, the insurance policy they pay will pay for that that adjuster, that lawyer, that accountant. Just depends on the policy. After you start with a policy, which is sort of the base document, you move to the exclusions. That's where you're hearing, and it's true in many cases, that you do have virus exclusions in your policies. That doesn't necessarily mean that this falls into that circumstance, but maybe it does. Again, depends on the policy. As we talked about earlier, exclusions, which are basically we're not covering for X, are construed narrowly and against the insurance company. Endorsements are the opposite, right? That's an additional thing that is covered. And those are construed broadly and in favor of coverage. So again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how the courts believe that insurance contracts generally should be construed, should be interpreted in favor of the insured and against the insurance company.
Of course, the insurance companies will never tell you that.
They never will. And you may have heard from and we'll get to this in the end, you may have heard from your broker or insurance company, and many of you may have already submitted claims and been denied. You may have heard that your policy doesn't cover this circumstance. I can't tell you sitting here today without your policy if that's true or not, but I can tell you that if they're saying you've got a virus exclusion, you're done, that's not true. And there may be something that can be done. Just have to look at the policy.
There's definitely been a campaign of disinformation that's already started on behalf of the insurance companies. You're seeing it they're pumping out stuff through different media channels. They have their lobbyists, on 5 Fire Alarm in DC lobbying, but like Ben said, just because you have a virus exclusion is not the end all be all of your claim.
So we could be doing an entire presentation on this slide alone. I'm not going to get too far into it. Again, most of this depends on what the language in your individual contract and individual policy. But things that we've seen a lot of, things that keep popping up over and over and over again, are the definition of physical loss or damage. Physical loss or damage, right? What is loss? What is damage? What is property damage? And we talked a little bit about how sometimes there are orders that are phrased that says this shutdown is because COVID-19 constitutes property damage. Some orders are that specific. That's great language. We've got a tracker, basically a national tracker that keeps those those orders and files them away. We don't have one yet from Miami-Dade County. Hopefully we will. But Broward County has one, as I said. Key West has one. So another, I'm sorry?
Those.
Yeah. The anti-concurrent cause provision. Okay. Concurrent cause is a difficult thing to understand. It's a legal concept. The best way to say that is some states in the insurance law is a state-by-state construct. Every state has slightly different insurance law. But concurrent causation and concurrent cause means if you have a harm, a peril, as the insurance contracts call them, that is caused by two different things. For instance, a virus and a civil authority shutdown, right? If you are in an anti-concurrent cause state, if you have either one of those, you don't get coverage. In a concurrent cause state, you only need one. So it's a very different way to approach these things.
What is Florida?
Florida is a concurrent cause state.
Oh, great. Good.
Now, that there was a Supreme Court opinion from 4 or 5 years ago, and as many of you probably know, the construction and composition of the Florida Supreme Court has changed since then. It has become more conservative. Generally, and again, this is not universal, and this is not always the case, but generally, more conservative courts tend to be more insurance friendly and less insured friendly. It's not a uniform way to approach it. It's not 100% true, but that is generally the way it works. And we don't know if the Florida Supreme Court would still endorse the concurrent cause analysis. All we have right now is the most recent order, and the most recent one is concurrent cause.
And some of you all have businesses outside of Florida, so that would be something that we have to again look at the policy, look at the particular law in that jurisdiction, and do a case by or policy by policy analysis. I know that there's some folks on the line that have Florida hotels and in different states throughout. So, and we litigate throughout the country.
So let's say that you look at your policy and you do have business interruption insurance. There may be limitations on that. Time, amount. Some business interruption is specifically only for certain events, right? You get business interruption if a water main breaks. You get business interruption if a fire happens. So again, it's a policy by policy examination. And there's no one size fits all approach here. The language generally is similar. There are different endorsements, different exclusions. And so you have to be very careful when you read these things.
One thing I'd like to add to that, what seems obvious that's going to happen is it's not just going to be, May 15th, it's business as usual. It's going to be a type of gradual back to business mode. Example, especially for those on this call that have F&B. We've signed up clients that are in the restaurant business, and we were on a call with the governor's office that they were telling us that when they do open up restaurants, there will most likely be a 50% square foot that basically
reduction in occupancy.
Right. So if you have 10,000 square feet, you can only use 5,000 square feet of the dining room. So what happens there? Your business will continue to be interrupted, and that's going to cause two issues. There's the business interruption insurance policy side, and that argument. But I think there's also going to be an issue with the landlords. There's already issues with the landlords right now as to whether or not, rent abatement, rent deferral, whatnot. But, and there that's a whole separate conversation because there's force majeure clauses and that sort of thing. But think about, how to, when this does open up, if you are in the F&B business, how that's going to affect your business if there's a 50% mandate.
So we talked just on the last slide about how insurance law differs on a state-by-state basis. That means in Florida that there's a timeline for when insurance companies have to respond to claims that you push forward. So if you reach out and you say, I'm filing a claim for business interruption, the insurance company has 2 weeks. They've got 2 weeks to review and acknowledge that that claim. Within 90 days, they have to pay or deny. Now, you can see the dots in each of those sentences. There's a lot more there, and there's some exceptions, and this isn't a hard and fast 1490. But generally, these things happen pretty quick. And once there's a denial, and we, by the way, have been seeing quick denials. Many of you probably have already been denied if you've submitted claims. Many of our clients have submitted claims and been denied. We had a claim, one of our clients submitted a claim. 7 minutes later, they got a denial. So, obviously the insurance companies are looking to deny these. They don't want to let grass grow on these claims. They're denying them quickly, which in some respects is good because it means we can push them into lawsuits immediately, get publicity for their case, and ratchet up the pressure on the insurance companies. That's what this is all going to be about. It's going to all be about the increasing pressure on the insurance industry until they can, and that's not just litigation pressure. It's also political pressure. It's also public perception pressure. The increase of pressure on the insurance companies until it gets to a point where they can no longer sustain it, and something has to break. Next slide. Danny, that's all I've got, folks. Danny's going to talk through next steps, and then we'll answer any questions that you have.
Yes, we're going to open it up to questions. Okay, so as I said before, Javi and Ben have kindly agreed, and their law firm of Kozak Tropin have kindly agreed to review policies at no charge, with no obligation. There's no engagement, nothing like that. If you want to have your policy reviewed, just send it to me. The email address is there. It's dbenavidez@sandsav, SANDSAV.com. So just send me the policy via email, and I will get back to you once it has been reviewed. In the meantime, you have to put your carrier on notice of a potential claim. We've circulated a sample letter, and it will be circulated after this call, that you can use with a cover email to put your insurer on notice. In the meantime, that's very important. Also important is be careful, because if the insurance company calls you asking for information or additional requests, do not respond to those, forward those to my attention for the time being until we can finish reviewing the policy. We found that insurance companies are asking people for information that may cause them to waive their claims, so we need to be very careful with that. And then finally, if we determine that there is coverage, then the Kozak firm has agreed to take the cases on a contingency, meaning that they only recover if you collect money, so there is no requirement that you pay them anything out of pocket. And the fee that is between 10 and 33%, depending on which point in the case you recover. So we'll open it up now to questions. I will unmute the line so that everybody can speak.
See, there's a question on the Zoom group chat from Joe Yarzabal. I know you can help. However, can we trust our agent?
Yeah, once quarantine's over, I'm gonna expect something.
Okay, so I've unmuted the lines. I may have to mute it again if there's too many.
Ben, you want to answer the Joe's question regarding trusting their agents? You're on mute. You can unmute yourself.
Ben, I think
Just on the bottom, unmute it. Oh, you can't?
So the answer is, it depends. We have actually been referred a lot of policies from some agents. Some agents have sent us a lot of policies. But I do know that there are other agents who are telling their clients that they don't have coverage. They may not be doing that because they're trying to be evil or greedy. They may be honestly under an impression that there is no coverage. They are only operating from the information that they have. So if the insurance companies are telling them there's no coverage, that's the information they have. They may not be from a bad place. They may just be ignorant of it. And I would recommend, You don't want to come to us? That's fine. Go to somebody. Get somebody to look at your policy. You may not have coverage. You may not. But it should be an independent person with no connection to the insurance world at all. A lawyer who's there for you, and not for the insurance agent's job is to the insurance agent's job is to make money for the insurance company. Danny, I think we are getting a lot of background noise. Maybe we can mute.
I'm going to mute. I'm muting. Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody, and then I guess if you have questions, please put them into the chat. So put them in the chat, and we'll answer them that way because there's some background noise.
But people can mute them.
Yeah, I've allowed people to unmute themselves, but I've muted everybody and allowed people to unmute themselves.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and shoot.
I'm sorry, is it Freak? Is it Freak Boars?
Yeah, Frederick. Freek. Yeah, it's a Dutch name. I have a question. How will the damages be calculated? We've got like a business interruption insurance. Yeah. And will they compare the hypothetical situation that the virus would roam freely compared to the situation it is close to government decision? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then try to subtract it, or would it be like, okay, the government closed the thing, and now it's a business interrupted for I don't know how many months?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and the answer is nobody knows. What happens, as I'm sure anybody that's put an insurance claim in before knows, you adjust the claim, right? And ultimately, most of the time, you reach some sort of settlement agreement. You want $5 million, the insurance company says $500,000. Maybe you reach an agreement. If you don't reach an agreement, then you sue them. And then a court determines it. I think something like that is likely to happen here. Again, I can't see the future. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. But what I expect is that when we bring these claims, will make claims as though there was no business at all. That you should be entitled to the full amount of your lost profits and lost income. So what we're telling people is send us, when you prior to making a claim, put together 18 months of financials, tax returns for the last couple of years, right? This happened right before Ultra, happened right before spring break. Those are really high income months for a lot of you guys. So you probably want to make sure that you're breaking down the last 18 months on a month by month or even week by week calculation. There's going to have to be, a battle of the experts, and you'll have actuaries and forensic accountants who will go through and say, okay, yeah, in 2014, the month of March and April were this, and then in 2015 and 16, like that, and it'll be a fight. And the insurance company will come in and say, okay, let's say that we agree that you get some coverage. You only get coverage, as you said, for what your amount would have been if COVID was going on. Certainly that would have been a reduced occupancy, so you shouldn't get the entirety of your claim. Then you negotiate. And if you can't come to a reasonable negotiation and a reasonable agreement, you go to law. You go to the courts, and then you fight about it in front of a jury. And then whatever the jury decides is the answer.
And we've got history with obviously with damages experts, and we work with them all the time. One of the companies that we work with is called Berkowitz, Pollock and Brandt. They're CPA, forensic accountants, CPAs, and they're experts in lost profits. So it's going to be you're going to say X, the carrier is probably going to say Y, and then there's going to be what Ben called the battle of the experts. Experts can obviously get very expensive, but as Danny said, we will be putting our money where our mouth is and paying for all those costs. I see another question coming in here.
Yeah, is this from Ray?
Ray says, I own a parking company and all our locations let us go, and we don't see any help coming from the PPP loan. How can we ask our insurance company to help us in this time of need?
It's exactly as we discussed. You need to look at your policy. First, you need to have a lawyer look at your policy and determine if you have coverage. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Your policy may not have coverage. I was reviewing a policy from a really substantial catering company, and they had no business interruption insurance protection. If you don't have protection for lost business income in your policy, there's probably nothing you can do here. You need to have that payment, that coverage. Otherwise, the insurance company is going to say, why should I pay? They didn't pay me for this protection. So the answer is, if you have that protection, if you have that coverage, then you make a claim. If the claim gets denied, you sue them. It's that simple. And yeah, no worries. I see there's a first part of your question, Ray. And I think what you're asking me is, should you stop paying your insurance policy premiums? The answer to that is absolutely not. You need to keep paying your premiums. Insurance companies will take any opportunity to deny you coverage. Often, one of the ways they deny coverage is by saying you weren't paying your premiums. Another important thing to note for everybody, and this wasn't covered in the presentation, but it is something that we're telling people. If your policy comes due on May 1st, you may need to put a claim in prior to May 1st. Oftentimes, there are what are called statutes of limitation. There are limitations on when you are allowed to file a particular claim. Again, a lot of this is determined by the language in the policy, so it's hard to say generally. But it is possible that if your policy is coming due on May 1st, and you don't put a claim in until May 5th, the insurance company can deny you based on that.
We have another question from Jay Garcia. If the virus exclusion is there, what other legal options would a firm like yours seek?
So we talked a little bit about, again, it depends a lot on the language in your policy. But we are taking some cases that have virus exclusions. And the reason is, for what I said earlier, the argument is that the virus itself isn't what caused the business interruption. It's the civil authority orders shutting you down. It's, do you have an ingress-egress clause, right? So ingress-egress, which was briefly mentioned, but is we didn't spell out, means if because of some event, people cannot get to your building and therefore cannot pay you for, letting out your rooms or whatever business you're operating, you get money, right? So you're not shut down, people just can't get to you. The best example of that is if you are running a hotel in the Keys right now, there are police barricades stopping anyone to go down there who's not from the Keys, who doesn't own property and live there. Well, that's an ingress-egress problem. Now, you might run into the same issues where if the ingress-egress clause refers back to the virus exclusion and says, yeah, ingress-egress, but only when it's not caused by a virus, which is why you need to have an in-depth review of the policy. But there is at least a chance that you can travel under a different theory. Again, it's all a policy-by-policy determination. The important thing to remember is that just because you have a virus exclusion, it does not mean you don't have a chance for coverage.
And I think the reason, that I like the Kozak firm, and, I've sent my clients to other attorneys that have reviewed these policies, and they just don't want, they'll take the case, but you have to pay. I like when a law firm, and it's very important that a law firm is willing to take the case on contingency, because as Javi said, you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. If the case does not prevail, then the firm will not collect money. And it takes a firm of some substantial size to be able to do that, because you have to front all these costs. And at the end of the day, you don't even know if you're going to win. So not every firm is willing to take these types of cases. I know several that won't, but it's important to find the firm, and the firm that will give you the best split on those contingency fees. So it's all good news that you guys are doing this.
And quality too. I mean, you guys can look up. You can look up our firm. Its reputation, its results. We've been around for almost 40 years. We do class action work, contingency work. We don't have litigation financing, so we finance our own cases. So it really is our money. So if we decide to take a case, we do our homework, we do our due diligence. We've been reviewing a lot of policies, and like Ben said, some, we just we don't feel comfortable with, and we'll let you know, one way or the other. And you can seek a second opinion if you don't like our opinion. But we are taking cases with virus exclusion for the reasons that Ben said.
And look, if we review your policy and we think it's good, and we tell you that we think it's good, there's still no obligation for you to hire us. There are a lot of lawyers out there. You can hire whoever you want. Obviously, we think we do a good job, but your call.
So Jay Garcia has another question. I think it's a good one. Some hotels have kept their rooms open for booking to show that they're mitigating the loss. However, civil authority does not allow them to take reservation. What is your opinion on the subject matter? And I think that that's a good question. And yes, I mean, I think that basically that's the answer, right? You're doing what you can to mitigate. You're accepting reservations to the extent that you can. You're open for it. But you're barred from doing it, and so you tried to mitigate, and that failed. So I think that is what you should be doing if you're a hotel. You're open unless you are prohibited from taking reservations. I think on Miami Beach they are. You're there, but you can't do it, and so therefore you've tried to mitigate and you can't do it. So that's exactly the answer.
That's a good. Did you in good faith try to mitigate? And what
it kind of proves that it's caused by the virus, by the government decision instead of the virus.
Yeah, that's right, Frederick. And I think that mitigation for a hotel is going to look different than mitigation for a restaurant. Restaurants, as you know and seen, are doing takeout. They're doing delivery. Folks that didn't do delivery before, they're doing that sort of thing to try and get some cash flow into the business. But in a hotel, especially in the beach, where it's pretty strict that it's a no-go, you do the best you can.
Right. And to that point, the hotels, if you think about it, if we were open, we would have a ton of people trying to come down to Florida right now. I mean, if the beaches were open, everybody from New York started coming down when the virus, hit, and that's part of the reason that they had to close us down. We would be, we'd have pretty good occupancy, actually, I think, in the hotels if they would just let us take reservations, let us open our F&B. We'd be the only ones open. So that's,
yeah,
it is totally the government shutdown that is causing the problem.
Okay, any other questions? We're getting we're about 50 minutes in, so we're happy to answer any questions. You can send them to us, send them to Danny. We're working closely with Danny and his firm. So again, please feel free to shoot us an email. But we're here to help.
Yeah, my email address, I'm gonna enter it into the box, and Javi's email address, I'm entering it into the box. If you have email, if you have questions, you can email Danny, you can email us. I'll tell you what I tell a lot of people, which is I really like my job because my job revolves around helping people. And this isn't just about you guys. This isn't just about the hotel owners. This isn't just about restaurant owners or small business owners or medium business owners or large business owners. This is about America and making sure that our economy gets back to speed as quickly as we can. The insurance companies should not be the only people in America who come out of this okay. The insurance companies should not be the only people in America who turn a profit because of this event. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take your policy money and say, we don't have to pay it out. They're turning this into a profit-generating event. It's disgusting. It really bothers me, and I hope it bothers you too.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining. Thank you for your participation. Feel free to email us, and we will be here for you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.